Welcome back to another episode of The Crazy Mind of George, and today's is going to be a doozy. So, ladies, strap in to listen to this one. Men, get ready to be put in your place. I have two of the most powerful women that I know in the world of digital media, marketing, running companies, leading from the heart first, being moms, superheroes, superwomen. I don't know how they do it. I'm going to humbly sit by and take a lot of lessons today, but we're going to have some awesome conversations about story, relationships, community, and how to best do that. So without further ado, I would love to welcome my two friends to the show. So Melonie and April, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, George.
It's okay. I know we're all going to talk over each other, and it's just part of the fun, right? I think it would happen even in person. Melonie and I have done that to each other. We just start yelling at each other. It's all love. It's all love.
It's all love.
It's all love. And I'm into my first cup of coffee, so my energy will get greater and greater as we go because these 3 a.m. workouts are kicking my butt, and they're good. And let me be in integrity. I wake up at 3:30. I get to the gym at 3:45. But it's still got a 3 in it, so I call it 3 a.m.
That counts.
Really?
Yeah.
See, as long as you guys say it counts, I'm good. I'm going to literally be teeing up conversations for me to get permission slips all day. I'm like, they said it was okay. They said it was okay. They said it was okay. So here's what I want to do. So I love asking questions right out of the gate, and I'm going to put you both on the spot really quickly. And April, you're going to go first. So right before we started today, we were talking about, April, you're coming up on like your 5-year anniversary of like when you launched your community, when you got into this. So my question for you is, looking back over the last 5 years or even your entire career, what is the biggest mistake you've ever made in business, and what did you learn?
Well, probably two things I would say in sort of mistakes. One is kind of more broad scoped, and the other one's probably a little bit more tactical. But the broad scope one is feeling, and I still make this mistake to this day. So I'm still learning after 25 years of being an entrepreneur. But I would say the biggest mistake is just trying to rush the process. I'm a very impatient person when it comes to my own success. And I get really, like in a hurry, like, why can't this happen? Like, go ahead and make this, I have these big visions. I'm a visionary, and I see these things that I know I'm creating, and I want them to happen tomorrow. And I've been that way for 25 years, my entire career, just knowing that there's a longer road in front of me, but wanting to constantly shorten the path. And I need to remember, and hopefully this will be, helpful for others if you're feeling that way, to really just enjoy the journey. I teach around storytelling, and so that's kind of the beauty of storytelling, is enjoying the journey, and then you have the story to tell. But if we're rushing it all the time, which I tend to do in my own life, then you miss the story, you miss the lessons, right? So that's kind of the broad scope one. Is I still to this day catch myself doing that, and I constantly have to rein myself back in and just remind myself to enjoy the journey and pay attention to the stories, because those are the things that I need to learn so that I can go and share those with my audience. The more tactical thing that I would say that I've really learned, and this one I'm clear on, I wish I had hired help sooner. The faster you can get some assistance and help in your business, even if it's putting your children to work for you, or your neighbor, your babysitter, which is how I started. I literally employed my babysitter first. And then just eventually I've worked my way up to some employees now. That has been crucial to freeing me up to go and create and do more things, actually create and do the things that I genuinely love doing, and less of the things that totally bog me down. So if I could give a piece of advice to anyone, truly, no matter where you are, whether you're starting, where I was 5 years ago, starting a brand new thing, or you've been at it for a while, you're kind of always going to tell yourself you can't afford it, but you really can't not afford it. Getting help in your business. And that could be hiring coaches and mentors, and it can also be just hiring staff.
Totally.
Or virtual assistants, whatever it may be.
Totally. Well, I think, and we'll unpack that a little bit more once I ask Melonie, but I think, it's what you said is you can't afford not to, right?
Totally.
Like it's the trap, right? It's that stagnation that happens when we get there. And by the way, for everybody listening, and listen, I'm not a financial guy. I have one. But tax write-offs, depending on what state you live in, you can employ your kids. I'd look it up.
Yep.
Google is your amazing friend. Check out those write-offs because there's nothing like putting family child labor into effect and teaching them quote unquote lessons as we do it, right? Like,
Absolutely.
but it's all love. It's all love. All right, Melonie, you got the gap, you got the break, you know what's coming, and I actually can't wait to hear yours, Melonie. So Melonie, when you think back, and just for everybody to give a little context, I'm going to let them share their story of like how they've got into this and where they are. But Melonie came from a soul-sucking industry into a heart-centered industry. And so I am sure there are some lessons that came from being I was talking about her being an attorney, by the way, to now being where she is now. But Melonie, I would love to hear from you. And like, when you look back, like, what do you think one of your biggest mistakes was, and what lessons did you learn, and what do you carry forward with it now?
Yep, this is not going to surprise you at all, George, because you know me well. But the number one thing, I think, if I could change things and go back, and I do believe like everything unfolds the way it should be, but
Totally.
They're self-limiting beliefs. And let me just expand on that a little bit. You grow up thinking you have these character traits. And in fact, I was just talking to someone about this yesterday because I don't identify myself as a creative. And she sort of stopped me in my tracks and said, oh my God, let me tell you 50 ways you're creative, right? So you jump into these labels, and those labels can create a lot of doubt. And you start thinking, at least for me, you start thinking, I'm not good at this. I don't have a background in this. I don't have a degree in this. And what am I doing in the commercial food industry as a former corporate and securities attorney? I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. But those beliefs and those doubts really, and they still do. I have not perfected this. They get in my way. And that doubt is such a killer, right? I mean, it's it slows you down. And mindset is everything in a business, especially as an entrepreneur, because you get tested every single day. You know, one of my mentors in this industry says working in the food business is like getting slapped in the face and then hugged every day, and you're just hoping for more hugs than slaps. And that couldn't be, I mean, that's so true, right? But if you don't have your head on straight, and if you can't like look through all those doubts and go, you know what? I was a corporate and securities attorney and now I own a food company. Like, if I can do this, I can do anything, and so can you. And I speak to a lot of women because our customers are primarily women. And, you know, they really identify with that belief, that fear of, oh, but this is what I went to school to do, and this was my path. And you got to get out of that. And this is coming from someone who's super risk adverse, which, by the way, doesn't go hand in hand with being an entrepreneur. But that's what they teach you as a lawyer, is to spot risk and avoid them. So those beliefs, you know, those doubts, those restrictions that I've put on myself, really, it takes a lot to get through them. But once you do, and once you build, you have those little wins that build the confidence that you get. I mean, you can things start snowballing, as George likes to say. You get momentum, and then you get that confidence, and it grows. But anybody who's experiencing that self-doubt, or I don't have the training that allows me to do X, I mean, I'm just a perfect example of why you should just throw that belief out the window.
So and Melonie, and just for context, guys, Melonie and me and her husband and our families are friends. We're business partners. We know each other really well. So it's kind of really easy for me to pry the lid off of this one. And Melonie, I've had some deep talks about this because both of us share a lot of similarities when it comes to mindset. But I think what's really important, Melonie, and I just remember this distinction, you talk about that doubt in your brain and like how it's there. I think there was also a big point. You and I had a conversation where we both acknowledge and accept that it never goes away. We just become aware of it, right? So now I know, like, you know, we're in the middle of, you know, craziness in the world and we're doing it. And I know there's times that thing creeps in, right? So how do you handle it now? Like, how do you become aware of it? How do you mitigate it? What do you do to put into practice or shift it the other way? Like, I would just kind of love to hear your process.
Absolutely. And I think if you don't shift it, it is the slippery slope of just going downhill, right? Mm-hmm. So that doubt creeps in all the damn time. I mean, I think that any entrepreneur would tell you that. But for me, the awareness was step one, right? And George and I, we did have really in-depth conversations where I think I actually cried, which I never cry. Like, It takes a lot. But just really figuring out where some of these, and unpacking where these limiting beliefs came from was pretty powerful for me. So you got to do that work. I think it's not only recognizing them, it's figuring out why they're there. For me personally, I had a lot of experience as a kid as being picked on by other girls and bullied. And I don't think I realized the effect that had on my life and the limiting beliefs that caused and all the confidence issues. And so really unpacking that and going, oh crap, now I see why I've developed the propensity to feel X or Y or do Z. And so when it comes up, I pause. And it is really that moment where I pause and I go, this is that ego or that belief, and it's popping up. And I take some really deep breaths, and it sounds corny, but it is just a way for me to reset. Because if I don't do that, it will just keep crumbling in. You know, I'm someone who I can get really anxious about finances, which, by the way, if you own a startup or any kind of business, like that's obviously up and down all the damn time. So if I don't take that moment to just stop and pause and like, oh, be aware, and then go, okay, this is coming up. I know it's coming up, and now I get to pivot. And then I just think about something really freaking positive. And for me, like, I'm a dancer. So it might be like a dance choreograph going through my mind. Literally, that sounds cheesy, but I have to switch it up to be able to turn it off. And then I can just kind of plug through my day. Now, I do a lot, though, to work with this. I meditate. Totally. I exercise all the time. I'm just now starting to focus on breath. Actually, your recommendation on the book I'm currently reading. And I think all that goes into it. It's not just something you can do. Like, hey, we'll just recognize that limiting belief and then stop it. Nope. You know, it takes practice.
Yeah.
But I do think if you don't practice, then you'll sabotage yourself, or at least that's my experience.
Yeah, no, I love it. And just the book that she's referencing, by the way, is called Breath by James Nestor. If you've done breath work, or if you wonder about a lot of the stuff in the world, I highly recommend reading this book. It kind of blew my mind on how much we have de-evolved as humans from inappropriate breathing, not chewing foods the right way, and then the effect that it has on our physiology, which then affects our performance. It's mind-blowing. And just, if everybody wants to try this, because Melonie's in my mastermind, and we do breath work a lot, you know, like intranasal breathing, things like this. But I thought that was enough. Now when I do 2 workouts a day, I literally cover my mouth or keep my mouth shut the entire time. And I challenge everyone, try to go for a 45-minute walk and breathe through nothing but your nose, and have some tissues for like the first 5 minutes, because you're going to detox some stuff out. But it's really powerful, like what it does to your body and psyche. And so before I get into anything deep on your past, I have a question for both of you, because I think it's really prevalent. And I don't know, in April, I think it probably comes up in storytelling a lot, right? So you build community through the power of story, right? And then Melonie, you use your story to empower women to, you know, take action. But I think there's this, and I don't know, I'm not a woman, obviously, so I'm leaning into you guys on this one. I think it's really easy just to accept that, like, women tell stories and they want to be emotional and they want to put it out there, where like guys don't, right? And I see this all the time. Guys like, oh, I'm not going to be authentic, and then we just have like this expectation. But I want to know from you guys, like, when you're going through your journeys, when you're in your stories, and you know that these stories share and they inspire and they empower, how do you walk that line of like, is this intimate or is this authentic? Like, does this belong out there or does this belong in here? And it's kind of like that barometer. Like, how do you guys dictate, like, what gets shared to the world? Is it going to be positive, impacted? So April, I'd kind of love to hear your thought process on this one, because I think it's prevalent across the board, but I would love to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I actually think that women still struggle with this, quite honestly, even though we are more prone to storytelling and we're probably more prone to kind of sharing our stories with each other versus men, to your point. We still have like this filter that we run everything through of what are other people going to think? You know, what if I'm not enough? What if my story doesn't matter? What if it doesn't have an impact? Or what if I scare the crap out of somebody by telling them my truth, you know? So I think that we still have this really huge filter that women, and this is really what I try and love to do at Light Beamers, is try to help women walk through that filter and get on the other side of it so they can share their story very boldly and brightly and in a positive way. For me, you know, I have found that I know when I'm hitting the story, either for someone else or even myself, when there's emotion and when there's real vulnerability. And Brene Brown, you know, of course, talks about vulnerability at length and with great brilliance. And I, couldn't agree more that when we are tapping into that thing into our stomach that just makes us feel so, fearful of what are others going to think, or what if this is too much, or what if it's not enough, and all of those what ifs, those are really like powerful things to pay attention to. And that vulnerability is usually a signal that you're tapping into your truth, and that truth should be shared. It's not too much. It's not sharing, things that are not appropriate. It's sharing your honesty, your truth, your real power, the light that think that our stories hold. I just had a call with a client who kind of like, she's a podcaster, and she has an episode coming out literally tomorrow. And 2 days ago, after she finished recording it, she gets on, SOS with me. And she's like, I am freaking out because I just shared some stuff on this recording, and I don't know what to do. I think I need to erase it or delete it. And I was like, don't you dare, because what you're feeling right now, once you release this on Wednesday and you turn around and see the reaction it's going to get from your audience, you're going to draw so many people closer to you, because once you share your truth, it gives someone else permission, or at least takes a step towards sharing their own, right?
Totally.
And so it's the thing that builds us up in community. It's the thing that connects us. And so it's that vulnerability, that real pit in your stomach that this makes me so nervous. But here's the real barometer. Ask yourself if not sharing it is an option, right? Like, are you going to feel suffocated and silenced and muzzled and like, oh my gosh, like a raging tiger in a cage if you do not share that story? And if the answer is yes, you really, really, really know that that's the story that needs to be shared.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I want to unpack that, but Melonie, I want to hear your thoughts on this one as well. And just to be clear, like, I'm not saying that men and women do it differently, but we, in my experience looking, and I'm sure you guys can see this, the way in which it's approached, like storytelling, doing marketing, like for whatever reason, it's seen different and there's different expectations. And I feel like the playing field needs to be leveled. Like it needs to be human. Not, man, woman, masculine, feminine, boom. Like, it just needs to be human. Like, story is everything. And our voice and our story is what creates possibility for other people. Yeah. And so Melonie, I would love to hear your thoughts on this one, because you are doing an amazing job of sharing your story and you unpack it piece by piece. But how do you feel about this?
Well, I come from a really weird perspective, because and I'm not trying to label myself. I've always been described as a pretty unemotional, at least outwardly, woman. I mean, I was career woman at a big law firm, and showing any emotion in work just gets kind of beaten out of you. Like, don't ever let them see you cry was the advice I got on day one. And I went through 2 pregnancies at that law firm, and I remember like crawling under my desk because like the hormones are acting up, and I'm like, I got to release. I can't let anybody see me. And so after several years of that, you start hardening. And I really have experienced that. And I think the issue with that is it made me a little bit less relatable to a lot of other women, because I'm not emotional. My husband always tells me, like, God, your emails are really direct. You're going to offend people. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just kind of like that. Get to the point, give me the facts, because that's what I've learned. And I've always been very driven and come from a family that really pushed, make good grades and be very driven and get to the top. And so it has taken the last couple of years when I, for the first time, experienced personal development work and, emotional IQ. And I realized I didn't have much. And very eye-opening for me to be like, holy crap, I actually don't have any problems sharing my story, but it's usually very factual. So it's not in a way that people can relate to. So I remember, George, maybe one of the first times it was at your mastermind when I had talked about some of my experiences as a child, and you either turned to me or Zeke. I can't remember if Zeke told me or you did. And you were like, oh my God, look at how she says that. There's no emotion to it. It's just like very, very factual. And that landed, I'm like, oh, because I want to be relatable, because if my story can help other women, and they can see how genuinely passionate I am about empowering other women and making sure nobody's left out, and inclusivity and propping other women up. I mean, that is really what I stand for. So if that isn't not coming across, like that's doing myself a disservice because I am so passionate about it. So I think for me, I've had to take some steps to try to like peel back the layers and like, put the wedge in the crack, cause some cracks and you come out a little bit. And it's taken some work. It's taken some really hard emotional work, and I'm still doing it, but I'm committed to it because I do want to be relatable, and feel that people see me as being authentic rather than just like, she's not really feeling it. So is it real, or what is she talking about? So I'm a work in progress, I guess.
Yeah, I think we all are, right? I think that's the point of all of this. I know April's going to be like, yeah, that's the power of story. Document the process, right? Like I love it. And the thing I'll say, Melonie, is I think there's a difference between being direct and being disconnected, right? Like I love the directness. Like emotionally grounded, connected people are direct. I mean, my wife. I love how direct she is most of the time, except for when I'm off the rocker and it like cuts through my soul and I have to like go whimper in the corner and I'm like, oh, I'm such a bad little boy and that had nothing to do with it, but I have to go work through that now, right? And then I go to the gym at 3:30 in the morning to get it out, right? I smash weights to get rid of it. And so when you think about this, so kind of for both of you, what I love, and you both kind of tapped on this, right? I think in April, when you were talking about this, like really checking in and getting to your story, when you get that pit in your stomach and you have that, I think that's the difference between sharing your authentic voice and creating a voice, right? And I think what we see a whole lot of now is we see a whole lot of check boxes when it comes to marketing and business, right? Like I'm supposed to say this, I'm supposed to post this, it's supposed to look that way. And on paper, the recipe looks like it would succeed, but then we all get the phone calls. It's not working. Nobody's responding, right? And so what are some of your gauges, April? Like, how do you feel when you get into story? Like, I said a couple years ago, and I think I live this way. I'm like, life happens in the messy details, so fuck it. I'm sharing it, right? Like, and that's just kind of like what it is at this point for me. And that's been kind of my therapy. But there's also been times on the other side where I'm like, okay, I can't do it unless it looks this way, or this way, right? Because everybody's doing it this way. And so how do you navigate that, April? Like, how do you look at like what to share, when to share, how to be like you versus like what the world wants? Or what are your thoughts on that when it comes to putting it out into the world?
Well, I think, for marketing and branding, right, which is a large part of this audience is probably interested in that topic. There's definitely a piece of you that wants to show up on brand and on message and, polished and, all the things that we're taught and is attractive. And I believe we also can share that behind the scenes, pull the curtain back and be real. And so I don't really subscribe to a philosophy. It needs to be all one way or another. I believe in some sort of balance. I mean, I sort of teach a formula to my clients about, TICS, and it's TICS. And I'm like, look, just create content and share with your audience stories that can teach, inspire, connect, and sell. Or think of sharing instead of selling, if selling makes you nervous, right? And so if you kind of show up as the branding person, the expert in your field, you can teach, you can share high value and share the brand message, and then you're inspirational and you're connecting content and post and emails and marketing can be more of like behind the curtain. Like, look, I'm just going to share with you April instead of like light beamers. I'm just going to be who I am today and share with you maybe some of my fears. Share with you maybe sometime, something that I'm experiencing right now that feels like a failure. Something that isn't as pretty, like you said, can be kind of in the messy middle. It's not really polished and ready for that brand statement and it's going to go out on the website, but it can still be part of who I am. And so I think it's important. This is just what I subscribe to. I think it's important that not only like brands and solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and small businesses, but I would really love to see larger corporations and organizations doing this more. There are a few out there that I think do it really, really well. But I still think, by and large, our culture in this country subscribes to the former, right? Like we've got to be buttoned up and polished, and we can't really show our cracks, because if we show our cracks, no one will trust us and want to hire us. And I'm thinking it's really the opposite, you guys.
Yeah.
If you would just show your cracks and show that you're human, they're going to fall in love with you even more. And they don't even care what your prices are at that point. They're going to choose you over the RFP they just got in the mail, right? Or email, whatever. So I wish we could, and hey, it's good. It's sign that I can be around for a while teaching what I teach, because there's plenty of people that still need to learn it.
Not wish.
So
We're doing it,
how,
April. We're doing it. We don't have to wish.
Yeah.
We're doing it. And just for everybody wondering, RFP is request for proposal. Just
sorry.
We're throwing around like corporate lingo over
Sorry.
here. Melonie's going to start dropping like contract names. I just happen to know some of them. So
yeah,
no, I think I absolutely love that. And when I think about it, I agree, by the way. There's very few big brands and things that I see like put the human in marketing. But at the end of the day, like what I think most people forget, like sales is a transference of energy, right? Which means in order for a sale to happen, it has to be human to human, which therefore marketing is just a human being showing up authentically to attract another human being. And then that's what allows the possibility for it to happen. And yeah, I think too, and Melonie, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because you've evolved so much when it comes from like business. Like you literally went from like, basically they told you be a man in a man's world as a woman. And I'm like, hey, all of you go shove that shit down your fucking throat, quite frankly, and I'll kick you in the shins, right? Like that's part of the problem with your toxic masculinity bullshit. Sorry, that's another podcast Stephanos and I'll do later. It's coming. But when you think about that, you were in that world, and you have this voice, you have this, like, you're a mother, you're a powerful woman, you want to empower other women, and you transition out, and you came from the old boys club, and then you had to kind of transition over. And it's been a process, I'm sure, right? How have you felt on that? Because what I love about you that I see from the outside is that you're not afraid. Sometimes you tell me you are, but I don't really believe you. You're not afraid to like document your journey and go through that growth process. So how has it been for you versus like in the beginning when you were like, I'm not emotional, don't cry, don't be here, to like, hey, here's who I am piece by piece, I'm working towards it. Like, how does it feel? Does it feel different? Is it inspiring to you? Are you getting into that momentum? I would kind of love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's been liberating for me. I mean, just to go back when I was interviewing to work at this big law firm, which was a great job. I'm not bashing the law firm, but I remember being like, oh God, I have to put on my resume that I studied abroad. And I was actually scared to do that because I was like, oh, they're not going to want to see that. They're going to want to see like total dedication, student government, law review, all this stuff. And then when I got there, as it turned out, most of my conversations in that interview, because you interview with like 10 people when you're going to a big law firm, was about that period of time. And most of them said to me, God, I wish I would have done that. I was so concerned about what my resume looked like. I wish I would have done that. And look, that didn't flip me right then. I mean, there were still, you're so worried about telling people you got pregnant. I mean, I remember I was so scared to just tell people. It is an old boys club. It's still the case, even though things are evolving and it's been better. And I had some really strong female mentors at that firm. For the most part, it's a good old boys club. It was in Texas. It's very conservative. So anyhow, you see a lot of that. So when I stepped out of that and kind of dove headfirst into this, I was like, I'm going to become the anti-corporate. Like, no more pantyhose. I'm not wearing a suit. We are going to have fun every day. A lot of our marketing is kind of cheeky and sassy because I could never be that way at the law firm. I had to be very serious and professional. And I'm still professional, but I have to have fun. I mean, otherwise, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. So I think for me, one of the first things we did was really spend a lot of time identifying our core values. Our number one core value is empowering women. Like everything that I post, I kind of look to our list and go, does it meet one of these? And it's not like I'm checking it and really worried about it. But my most recent example I'll give you, because this is totally fitting here, is there was this, or it may still be going on, this Facebook challenge for women. You had to be invited by another woman to post a picture of yourself. And it was this women's empowerment, social media thing. And I mean, talk about, when you talked about tics, I thought you meant like those triggers. Boy, I was like, what about all the women who don't get an invite? And I was pissed. And I had to like step back and go, okay, I have to write a post about this because I am feeling very emotional about it and it's strong. And when that happens, I really do want to write about it because that's important for me and my growth process. But I also realized that the feelings I had were the antithesis of the reason for the post. I mean, it was supposed to be women's empowerment. And I really had this struggle of like, am I going to be seen as this person who's bashing what's supposed to be a great thing because I have this issue with the fact that it doesn't apply to all women? And ultimately, I just couldn't not say anything, like you were saying, April. I had to say something about it. I wrote an invitation to everybody in the world to post that because I was like, you don't need an invite. I don't want you to be sitting at home waiting for an invite and feel like you're not included. And so for me, those things are very powerful, and it's therapeutic for me to write that, to sort of go through the process of writing the post that I did and actually put it out there, not knowing how it's going to be received. But, you know, I am my brand, and, you know, not everybody's going to love me. But what was interesting about that experience is I had about 10 women text me personally and say, oh my God, I read your post. I felt the same way. I just didn't want to post about it. And so to me, there is so much power in that. Like, I let these women off the hook, you know, and there's nothing wrong with not saying anything, but how cool that there were people out there who related to me. So that is kind of, you know, I wish there was more of a formula. Maybe there should be more of a formula.
There is. And like, this is why I'm so stoked to have both of you. Like, leadership is an active role. There's no passive leadership, right? Like we are either evolving or we're dying. We're either progressing or we're regressing. And so Melonie, I love that the formula is to show up, and you said something. And what I loved about what you said is you were like, there was a point where I was like, I just have to fucking say something, right? Like that is leadership. Like that is authenticity, right? And knowing, and the second part that you said, and I don't care whether you're a man listening to this, a woman listening to this, a business, an entrepreneur just starting, or all the way up, you can never, and I mean you can never turn down the volume of your voice and expect a positive result, ever. It is a guaranteed success for failure. And so Melonie, I'm fucking proud of you. And I saw that post, by the way, and I read it. But it actually, like, I'll give you a perfect example, and I think both of you will appreciate this. Like, we're in a car. There they are. It's all right. We got dogs. We got kids. We don't edit any of this out. This is unscripted. I told you guys, you don't want to get plugged into my real brain, but this is a little of the craziness that happens in there. Melonie knows more than anybody. We've had some tears. We've had, like, some brother and sister, like, I fucking love you. Oh. It's amazing. But this morning I was sitting here and I meditated this morning, and like, we're talking about a lot of stuff. We're talking about authenticity. We're talking about our voice. We're talking about how to show up in the world, how to make a difference in people's lives, how to empower women, how to empower men. And this morning I was triggered as shit. Like, I was triggered. I went to the gym. I got the workout out. I'm sitting here and I made the mistake of logging in Instagram before I did my journaling, right? And I see some state of the world, and somebody responded to me and they're like, don't send me all this stuff. It's bullshit. And I was like, okay, got it. And then I was like, oh, and my brain was running. I'm like, you can't be a leader with blinders. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. You have to. And like, every part of me, and I mean every part of me, wanted to write this post and be like, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. And then like, I really sat with it and I was like, I need to do this. I need to do this. And I ended up writing a post about where I get to change in leadership, where I get to go deeper, where I get to go into the dark, and where I get to explore those different things. And I think it's really powerful for everybody listening this to be as connected to yourself as possible and start to understand and learn your barometer, like what that thing is, right? I wrote an email about this. I think, Melonie, you read it. We have two choices. We can either be a thermostat or a thermometer, right? And our job is to be a thermometer, because a thermostat just tells you what's happening. It posts out, it's a part of the problem. It's like, oh, it's cold. Oh, it's hot, but it can't do anything about it. But a thermostat, like, oh, it's cold. Let me turn it up a little bit. Oh, it's hot. Let me turn it down a little bit. And I think it's really, really powerful. So Melonie, I'm proud of you for posting that and for writing that and standing in that. Do you, either of you, ever find it challenging? Like when you're, like Melonie, for example, like you were triggered in April, you help people uncover parts of their story and you teach storytelling. Do you guys ever find it challenging when you get that like pit in your stomach or something you want to share to like put it out there? Like, how does it feel? Do you like, I don't know, April, if you're like me, you're like, screw it. I feel it. I'm shipping it. Right. And Melonie like gets to a point where she's just boiling over and she's like, absolutely not. Right. And I know Melonie like yells at herself too. I love it. It's like so good. But like, What's the hardest part? I would love to know what the hardest part is about sharing your story or breaking through or sharing some of those things. April, what's the hardest part for you in that? And then how do you overcome it? Because I know there's a lot of people, myself included, that still to this day, I write a post and I'm like, I can't. I just can't, right? And then I do this funny thing where I'll literally hit post and I'll run away and go work out for 2 hours. I'll turn my phone off. I won't do anything. And my gauge is if I come back and I don't have any text messages, it was a good post. If I have are you okay? What the fuck did you just post? I'm like, oh, I should probably go read that again. But I would love to know your thoughts on that, April.
It's funny. I spent a good portion, really the first half or front load of my career, interviewing people. And so my job was to be sort of a bystander and emotionless, similar to an attorney, apparently, right? To be emotionless and just be a vehicle with, that story could be shared. And so I spent so much time and energy pouring into other people's stories that when I started building my business and especially using social media and, building my brand, so to speak, online, it was really funny to me that I was like, oh, I actually have to start sharing my story now. No one's ever interviewed me to find out how this works for me. And that has been such an interesting thing because suddenly I could more deeply relate to my own clients now who I've been like, go share your story. What's the big deal? Come on. These are the things that matter. Let's do it. Right. I just think it's out there. I know the magic that the story holds for other people. And I've always been focused on the audience, what they're going to get out of it and what it can do for the person who shares that story. But when I actually had to start doing this myself and really tapping into my own vulnerability, it was hard as hell. And it still is. I mean, it's not something that, even though I'm a, so-called storytelling expert or that I do this, I've been doing this for 25 years plus, doesn't mean I'm immune, that I just get a free pass and that it's really easy. And so it's those same things we've been talking about. When I get that pit in my stomach, when I feel that vulnerability, when I feel my emotion, I have to examine it. And I try to say, is this useful? I have a motto that when we share our stories, we shine a light. And I just think to myself, if I share this, would it be helpful for someone else? And if I can kind of run it through that barometer, then that's my free pass to share, even when I don't have it all figured out. It might be a little messy. It makes me extremely nervous. And so that has given me freedom to share my story more, even though I'm still applying my own technique to myself to pull out my own stories to share.
Yep.
If I can run it through and say, hey, this is at least what's coming up for me right now. Maybe if I share this, one other person would benefit from it. And if so, then I just give myself full permission to share. There are still pieces of my story that I'm struggling with.
Totally.
There are pieces of my story that I've never shared. I mean, I've shared with confidants and my husband and people in my family, close friends, but I have not made those known publicly. And, I'm keeping a little running tab, okay, one day, April, you've got to get up the nerve to share those stories because I've already run them through the barometer and I know that they actually would benefit someone else. But it takes guts to share your story, and it takes bravery. I did a whole symposium this last year with women, and it was all about stepping into your brave. And we have to step into our brave to share these moments in our life that feel so scary. It feels scary to share what we're really thinking inside. And so some days I win at that, and some of them I'm still working on.
I'd say that you always win, by the way, just so you know. And you said something, you're like, oh, I'm keeping a tally because I haven't shared, but then because it requires me to be brave. You're already fucking brave. Stop.
Yeah,
I'm about to come over there and kick you in the shins.
Okay.
You're already brave. Stop. Yeah. I was like, that was literally the longest stretched out, most passive, put yourself down. I'm like, no, you're such a powerful person. I do have a question about that though. When you said share if it helps somebody else, do you ever share because it just helps you? Your journey, your
absolutely.
post and your process? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's probably the second part of what I would say about when you share your stories, you shine a light. That light shines for someone else. And little secret sauce, it shines for you the brightest, right? It shines for you the brightest. And so then, like, our stories are healing. That's why sharing the story can be the most healing thing that you could ever do for yourself, regardless of what it does for someone else, because you will get such clarity and peace. And you said something earlier about when you were sharing your story and learning to kind of break free of your of the the life of the attorney and being such never share your story, never let them see you cry and sweat. And you used a word that you used to describe it, which was liberating. And that is really such a freeing feeling, to feel liberated, right? And so if we can get liberated from our own chains that years of storytelling has been holding over us, from things in our childhood, things that we've experienced, relationships that we've had, if we can break those chains free, then that's what's waiting for you on the other side of sharing that story, right? So yeah, it can be about your audience, and yes, it can grow your brand, and yes, it can help you bring in money to your business, and yes, it can help you do all those things. But more importantly, more than anything else, it will show you what you're capable of and how powerful you are, just because you owned that story. That story, you learn to harness the power of your own story at that point, instead of letting the story have power over you.
That's the mic drop moment. When you take it out of your brain and put it into the world, it neutralizes the charge. So
It totally does.
yeah, and it's something we all talk about. We all have stories, right? And April, I think you nailed something that is it's like this broken paradigm in the world of life. Like, not even business and entrepreneurship, life, that like somehow there's a finish line, right? Like, oh, I shared my story, it's gone, right? Or I won the race, so I can sit on the couch and be a fat ass for the rest of my life. Like, no,
right.
Like I think
you got to keep going.
Yeah, I reference this a lot because Joseph Campbell obviously put this in the hero's journey, and I think everybody misses the fact that after you slay the dragon, there's still another step. And they missed that one where you have to go back and teach the village, and then when you're done, another journey starts and the dragon gets bigger and lasts long.
It's a new level, next level, right? I mean, if you try that, right? It's
Yeah.
like you break through to one layer, and then guess what? There's a whole nother storyline waiting on you that you've got to go and break through that one too. So
yeah.
It's a never-ending process, but it's a good process because that's part of personal development and growth.
Totally. So, Melonie, I have a question for you. So now that you're on the other side of this, right? When you went from vampires to like heart-centered, like giving life, right? Like we'll pick our analogy, right? What was the hardest part? Because I know there's a whole lot of people here that are listening that hear this, like, oh, I have a brand, but I've never shared my story, right? Or I am sharing that story, the one that everybody wants to hear, right? Like, so Melonie, what I would love to hear from you is like, what was the hardest part for you? And then how did you step through that? Because obviously it wasn't an overnight thing where you're like, okay, I went from lawyer to I'm going to run a CPG food company. And like, you have those values. And just because you define the values doesn't mean like every day you're like, I'm going to go dance on camera today. I'm going to go on Instagram. I remember when we met, I was like, yo, go on camera, go. And I think I challenged him, like, go live every day for 30 days or we're not going to be friends, right? I make these like completely empty threats all the time because I don't really know how else to make them, but I was like, just do it.
Work.
So yeah,
I did it.
Yeah. So what was the hardest part for you? And then now that you've shared your story and you're documenting your process, like, how has it changed your thinking on like how you show up in the world and how you show up on social?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and this maybe is going to sound very simple, but the hardest part for me was allowing me to be myself. I mean, I had this thought that I needed to portray this image of a leader, and that meant professional and serious. And, I knew I was getting away. I knew I didn't have to wear a suit anymore. But I just had this belief that, like, are people going to buy my product if I'm really myself? And are they going to think I'm serious? And, all these questions were kind of going around in my head. And so it took a while to migrate over to like, I can be totally fine making a total ass out of myself on any social media post, or even it still scares me to go on Facebook Live. I don't know why. I mean, I can talk in front of a room, no problem. But you put a phone with really could be no one on the other end and it starts and I'm like, so it's funny how that works. But It was really just giving me permission. Like, it's okay. It's okay to be myself. And what I was finding as the more and more I would do that and I would be authentic and I would share things, it's kind of like when you're a teacher and you're in the room and someone's afraid to ask a question, but it turns out that like 10 other people have that question. I mean, same thing. I would start posting about things that were personal and people would actually engage with me. Like, oh, I'm really having that issue. You know, how did you combat it? And I realized that this stereotype of a leader that I had, learned and had been sort of ingrained in my mind for so long, maybe isn't wrong, but it just wasn't me. It just wasn't me. So when I was not authentic, or when I was trying too hard, or when I was not being myself, which by the way is how I felt my entire career at the law firm. I just didn't feel like I could be myself. Then I didn't really feel satisfied. I mean, I didn't feel fulfilled. And, for me, I get grounded every day in my mission of helping other women. But if I am not being authentic, it's like I can't achieve that balance where I feel like I'm making progress and really honoring what's important to me. So I would say that would be the hardest thing. I mean, it goes back to those limiting beliefs. Like, get out of your own way. Like, who cares if you look like an ass, or if, for me, I'm such a perfectionist. Like, if a word's misspelled in a post, who the freaking hell cares? So it's really just been dealing with that. Type A-ness, I guess.
Yeah, or whatever we want to call it. I mean, we could put labels on all of this all day, right? Like the unattachment being the final goal of all of this. Before I forget, by the way, guys, I'm loving this conversation so much. I normally tell people where to find you in the beginning of the episode. So I'm just going to seed it now because we're not done. But April, would you mind sharing for everybody the best place to find you, to learn more about storytelling, how to get into your world and community?
Yes, I'm pretty easy to find. My brand is Light Beamers, all one word, Light Beamers. And I have a community on Facebook, a private Facebook group called the Light Beamers Community. And that's probably the best, easiest, and it's free, easiest place to join me and just start learning some of the things that I teach in there. Plus, it's all about community, because I'm really big on getting more women to share their stories. And so I've just created a platform for them to have a safe place to do it. Like, it's scary to do this for the first time if you've never shared your story before. And we have a lot of examples in our world of being attacked and criticized for our words. And the Light Beamers community is a place where you can come and never be criticized or attacked for exploring the power of your own voice. Yeah. So I would say join there first. And if you want to learn more about what I do and what I offer, you can go to lightbeamers.com.
Yeah, I'll say this too. The worst place to be as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a human is in an echo chamber, alone, nobody in their corner. So the more places that you can find yourself aligned with the mission, like Benjamin Hardy talks about this in Personality is Impermanent, right? Like, you have to envision who you want to be. If you want to be that person that wants to share your story, be around people that shared their story. If you want to be that, $10 million business owner, be around people that have built it, been there, or are there, right? And so you are future pacing yourself to get there. So go check out April's group. And then Melonie, let's talk about it. Where does everybody find you?
Yep. Also, you can find me on social, mainly Facebook and Instagram, and it's Empact Bars, but it's with an E, so EMPACT Bars. And then I also have a private Facebook group for women only. Sorry, dudes, just for us bitches out there. Impact Women. And then you can find me at impactbars.com. If you're interested in our products, we're a natural snack food company for women, but we're mission based. So my passion is, helping women in a variety of ways.
Yeah, and just full disclosure, I am a partner in that company, and if you don't go support Impact Bars, I'm not going to support you. There's one of those empty threats again. But I will say, so for those of you who know and follow me, I'm doing at High Speed Daddy, one of our other companies, I'm doing this 75 hard challenge that Andy Frisella put together. Melonie is in the middle of it too. What day are you on, Melonie?
14.
I think I'm on day 36 today. And so for everybody wondering, like, what is that? It's 2 45-minute workouts a day. It's 10 pages of reading, a progress picture every day, a gallon of water, and then no cheat meals and no alcohol, basically is the whole thing, right? And so I'm dialing in my macros, and I've never paid attention before, but I'm actually just trying to get into this. And, like, it's almost impossible because I'm an addict to condiments, right? Like mayonnaise, number 1. Olive oil, number 2, creamy buffalo sauce, number 3, and I realized I was knocking down like 300 grams of fat a day, and they're healthy fats, but when I'm eating those with carbs, I have a lot of energy, but not really anything else moves on the scale. My body, my pants tend to get a little bit bigger, and so I've been playing with it. But we made this new product, and God, I don't even remember when I had it for the first time, but we have this trimmed down shake at Impact, and it is like a cinnamon sugar dream donut in your mouth, especially when you make it right. So for everybody listening, I want you to go get this trimmed down shake. Go to Empact Bars. It's EMPACT bars.com. We have bars too, but this shake will change your life. Get the powder, 2 scoops with 12 ounces of macadamia nut milk and a banana with some ice cubes. Absolutely mind-blowing. You're welcome. You can thank me in advance. You're welcome. Go get it. That's it. Okay, we'll get back to the interview now.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, well, April, we'll send you some. I mean, I literally, what I love about Zeke and Melonie, and they don't admit that they're addicts yet, but they are the biggest sugar and sweet addicts I've ever met. They just pretend not to be because they make healthy products that taste like things you should not be able to eat. Like, that's the best way for me to describe them. I'm just waiting for them to come out of the closet. They're like, all right, guys, we ate 84 donuts a day for 12 months to figure out how to make this flavor because every single product is like chocolate date night and peanut butter party in your blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, how do you even do this? And I just get to be the guy that gives marketing advice. So I don't know. I have the easy job. I get to eat it, drink it. Melonie, you can own that you're a sugar addict. It's okay.
I'm totally a sugar addict, so much so that we created a sugar detox plan.
Oh, that's right.
I love sweets. Like, oh my God, it's so arcade. There's sugar in it. Ironically, it's 0 sugar. But like, oh my God, you put a cookie in front of me and I cannot resist. So that is why on this challenge that George is talking about, you get to design your own nutrition plan, which is one thing I love about it. Because if it were no sugar, there's no way I could do it. So
You'd be out.
I'm doing no meat. Which, as you know, a West Texas born girl who grew up on chicken fried steak, it's pretty hard. I've never gone this long without meat ever in my life. But I'm just giving it a whirl and I'm gonna see what it does. But it's been interesting. But I couldn't do no sugar.
No way. I don't think any human should. I think we have too much sugar in the world, but like, I think you have to have that amount that like the level of happiness, right? We got to live a little bit here, right? So choose the cleanest one you can and have some fun with it. So we've been talking a lot about like sharing our story, authenticity, vulnerability, but I have a question for both of you. If you could change anything about the current state of the market, right? As an entrepreneur, as a woman entrepreneur, as a storyteller, social media, like when you look at the world that we live in, and all three of us work online, we have social profiles, we all have this. If you could change anything in that space, April, what would you change and why?
I would change just the nonstop pounding of mixed messages that we get and that we are overwhelmed by. And I'm kind of raising both hands over here because I suffer from it. And I also know that I'm also sending signals out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I struggle with that because I know I'm out there trying to get my message heard and I'm out there, playing the game, and I'm also on the receiving end of everyone else also trying to do that. So I wish we could come up with a way that we could filter our news feeds in a way that those names out there like Facebook and Instagram don't get to control because of money. That we get to control because that's really who we want to be hearing from.
Yeah.
And I'm just in that balance of trying to figure out how to be a voice in this space and taking up space with someone else and being really cognizant of that time and that energy that someone is spending with me, consuming my content, making sure that I try to give as much value as possible because I understand they're also being pounded.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to fix that. I'd love for you to share, George, your mind of George on that one of how we can really truly beat the algorithm. I know it's with relationships. That's what you teach. And that's what I totally subscribe to. And I just have to keep reminding myself to just follow that path, to keep sharing my story, to encourage other women and the people in my community to keep sharing their story.
Totally.
And that at the end of the day, it'll beat any look at or funnel or algorithm out there. And to, again, going back to the very first lesson I shared with you at the beginning of this recording, which is just to remember to enjoy the journey. Because again, I want to like 10x everything by tomorrow, because that's just my human nature. And I kind of sure everyone else, a lot of people feel that way. Like, why can't we just have it by tomorrow? Why can't the funnels be built and everything be working?
Can you imagine if you could get and read an entire book in 1 minute since you're in story? You wouldn't read any books, right? There's no journey in that process. And I remember at the beginning, you're like, oh, I'm impatient, right? Like I want it now. Impatient. I think personally that the solution to that is twofold. Number one is that us as the influencers, as the leaders, as the entrepreneurs, as the storytellers, we have to have tight containers and consistency, right? Because I think on our part, I think it's an equal 50-50. We contribute to the problem by being loose and bowing to the rules of the game that we think we have to play. And then on the receiving end is people thinking that overconsumption is going to somehow give them more and more and more, when in actuality it gives less and less and less. And so the way that I think about it, right, shopping malls aren't going to exist in a couple of months, right? But when I think about like when I was like 16 years old, I used to walk by the mall and they would always have that teriyaki chicken sample on the toothpicks, right? And I would walk by 45 times and never grab one. Then I would grab one. I always knew it was there though, right? I could smell it. I knew it was there. I would see it. There were times I wanted to eat it, times that I didn't. Times I took 4 samples, didn't buy any food, and times I bought a sample and bought the entree. And like, that's the best way that I can describe digital marketing and like how it should be. When we talk about your story, it's about being consistent and congruent, what you hit, right? Consistent and congruent, playing the long game, and then from the consumer side, respecting the customer journey that all of us go through. Buying cycles different. We go through emotional cycles, life cycles, financial cycles, relationship cycles, and all of those have implications on the way in which we consume, create, and grow. And so it has to be on both sides. And so on the consumer side, we also, because we're all consumers, you guys consume my content, I consume yours, I eat a whole shit ton of impact bars and that shake, right? Like I consume, but we all on both sides of the coin have to be intentional about how we do it. And we all have to have that container of like, you can sit here all day, listen to this podcast. You can listen to every podcast that we've ever put out. It's not going to change anything in your business. Not whatsoever. It's going to change your brain, and most likely it's going to hurt your business, increase the reactance to changing, because now you feel even more freaking stuck, right? And so I think that it's understanding that we're responsible on all sides to lead by example. And the one thing that I say over and over and over again is that everybody has to understand that the only reason the game is still played the way that it is because everybody accepted the fucking rules, right? This is not a dictatorship. We make the rules based on how we play the game every day. And so that's why I challenge everybody to play the game and be where you want to be, and go on one platform if you want to go on one and not on the other 7, right? Write an email every day if you want to, or write one a week. I don't give a shit. Just pick one and be consistent so that we can grow and you can grow. You can create those relationships and move forward. And so, yeah, I think about this one a lot. I really, really do. I mean, I reflect on this. It's probably one of the biggest questions I ask. And like, obviously we teach relationships beat algorithms, right? But that all comes from us getting plugged into ourselves, right? Because relationships only work if you know who you are, you know who your team is, you know who your customers are, and inversed on that one. So yeah, that's a really good one. And I love that too. And I think it's really important to be self-aware, right? April, what you said is you're like, I send mixed, I'm impatient. Like, you're not any of those things. Those are things that you have in the moment. They're not who you are, but it's the awareness of those that allow you to shift them. And that's really the secret sauce here. So Melonie, I'm gonna X the conversation over to you. I'm gonna toss it over to you with the same question. Like, when you think about, maybe it's your role in this world and impact bars, or maybe it's you and your journey, or maybe because you and I live in the CPG world where really shitting relationships, people they want everything up front. It's all transactional. If you don't have money, you don't exist, right? Like, if you look at this world of entrepreneurship, like in any part of it, what is one big thing that like you would change or want to see done differently?
Yeah, I think one thing I've noticed recently, and even with myself, is of course there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of negative feelings right now. People are unsettled, unclear what the future holds, and they're scared. And I've seen a lot of people just become paralyzed and have made the decision that like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wait it out. I'm going to live in inaction for a while. And I actually think that's the worst thing we can do right now. Like, rather than letting this situation and environment define me, I'm choosing to define, take control of the situation and define it myself. So look, it was not hard for me when this first hit. I have 3 young kids and a new business. I'm trying to do virtual schooling, which is a total crapshoot when you have young kids. And one of my kids is 2. I mean, it was laughable what we were trying to do every day in the house with 3 kids at home and a business. And it was very easy for me to get stuck. Mm-hmm. And I'm not out of it. It's been tough. I mean, our business, just like every other business, we've had to pivot. But what I've done is really, I have done so many things to not let this define me. I'm like, you want to give me a 75 hard challenge that's going to kick my ass? I'll take it. You want to throw a new business idea at me? I'll do it. I'm experimenting with breath work and new kinds of meditation. And it's really interesting because for someone who personal development was just not on my radar until about 2 years ago, right? I just didn't understand it. I didn't like the word self-help book. I still don't love that word. It's a bad description for what they do. But I was defined by my environment. And so I can relate to people who are, but I think inaction is the worst thing we can do right now. I think waiting it out, like, I understand people are in tough situations. And I mean, everybody's situation is unique. But for me, I'm going to do everything I can, if anything, just to help me financially, but also with my mindset. So I'm not, the statistics on depression right now and alcoholism are just growing every day. And like, I don't want to be there. And I'm committed to not letting that happen to me. So it may look really weird what I attempt to do. I mean, I may do some crazy shit just to get through this, but for me, at least I'm taking the steps to take control of it. And so if I could have anything change, and I'm certainly not trying to be judgmental on anybody, but it's just, taking that action, join a challenge, like work towards something, be inspired. I mean, I think right now, though, less and less of that is falling in our laps, and we have to make it happen ourselves.
Totally.
And that's what I think it would be my answer to that question.
This is my podcast. Nobody's fucking coming to save you. Nobody. And like, I mean that with love, right? Like, I even looked at the beginning of this when this happened, right? And I was like, oh, we'll be fine. Right? And now I'm 2 companies down and almost 6 figures a month lost revenue. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, cool. And then if I look back, and here's the thing, I look back and I'm like, what could I have done differently? And I'm like, oh, I could have done this. I could have done this. I could have done this. I'm like, great. I couldn't do it then, but I can do it today. And like, that's the path forward, right? Like Stefano says this, one of my business partners who coaches men, and he's like, we ask all the time, like, how can I better serve? How can I better serve? How can I better help? And the answer is always, you have to deepen your practice to deepen your service, right? Like, you have to go in. There's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of loss. There's a lot of pain. And there has been for a long time in entrepreneurship, which by the way, I think is one of the silver linings in this, is that it's putting a magnifying glass on like how unsupported small businesses are, how tilted in the favor of big business and power control and everything is. And now it's really coming out, like how suppressed people are in their voices, how literally, how massively social media and big business manipulates what people see to change agendas. Like, it's all coming out right now. But then at the same time, that's creating an entirely different playing field that, like what Melonie said, and April, you said this earlier too, like, we want it to happen overnight, but it all starts with a single step. And we can sit here and we can regress, we can go backwards, we can atrophy, or we can grow, right? And what we're all being called to is a different level. And the way that I looked at it, I was like, I don't think there's any way to lose the game if I make a commitment to not to watch one fucking minute of Netflix and to read a book and to write something and to post something and to do a challenge and to do it. And so we get to make the most of what all of this is. And we're going to come out of it either stronger, or we're going to kind of out of it in the same spot. And then we're still going to have to take an action. So Melonie, I love that. And I'm proud of both of you. I watch both of you like a hawk. You guys are in my world. I see everything you do, every post. I saw April's event. April does awesome stuff. Melonie, I watch every one of your posts doing the challenge, even though I know you're like, challenge. How am I going to get this? And if you guys wonder like how to tell if Melonie's from Texas, one of her daughter's name is Remington. And so that'll put it out there. And then she's going to let her older daughter have a mohawk that I potentially pushed over the edge and helped inspired back in the day too. So
you did it. She hasn't.
She done? You got to text me a picture. I haven't seen it yet.
I'll text you a picture. It's long enough she doesn't have to wear it all the time, but we finally, after a year of her begging for it, I said, man, I am the reason that this kid isn't, being herself, so we're just going to do it.
Yes.
So got
I love it.
so cute. She can style it up or wear it down, but she's got a sassy little haircut. It's so perfect for her.
I love it. I love it. And Melonie, I think it was such sound advice too about like, hey, when you get met with this, right? Like the worst thing you can do is freeze, right? And this applies to everybody. Men, women, entrepreneurs starting, boom, boom, boom. I think the only distinction that I think should be talked about, quickly, and April, I'd love your thoughts on this. And we talked about when you post on social, right? Like that gut feeling of like, oh, I know I should do this, right? But there's also times where you have to have discernment of like, is this feeling reactive and compensatory, or is this feeling something that's like calling me forward, right? So April, I'm sure that this comes up for you. Like, how do you disseminate that? Like you're triggered, I'm afraid of the world, or I'm impatient, or I'm saying this because I'm angry or mad. Like, how do you check your barometer to make sure that it's out for the right reason?
Yep. This is really easy for me because, my background from many years ago, I started out as a journalist and I worked in television news, and I was tasked every day with going out and telling bad stories, not in terms of quality, but in terms of context. And so I was chasing fire trucks and police cars and criminals and corrupt politicians and, sticking microphones in their face. And that's what I did. And I didn't like it. And I made a very conscious decision, probably at the age of 28, 29 years old, when I left that world after clawing my way into it, that I was no longer going to be a vehicle for sharing stories that were negative. And I drew a line in the sand very clearly. I can remember it even here sitting at the age of 48. So, 20 years ago. And I have made it my mission, which is really how all of this work comes about, to never, and I don't say, not to say I don't ever, because I falter on this, just like any human, but that's the barometer that I run my content through, and any kind of reaction that I might have to some stupid political post or something that's happening in the news, and I want to, say something derogatory or, sort of being pissed off about it. I just remind myself that I spent a good chunk of my career early in the day of sharing stories that were negative. And I just choose consciously not to do that anymore. And so I remind myself of my own mission that, I want to be a voice of positivity, and I want to be a voice of encouragement and hope. And so whatever I'm feeling in that moment, there might be something I really want to say, but then I just try to pull back and say, okay, then what's the positive side of this? Or what's the encouraging side of this? Or what's the educational side of this that I could share? And so it forces me to take a pause and not be reactive. I wish more people would listen and learn that, right? Because that's part of the problem on social media is everybody's so reactive and so judgmental and then pointing fingers instead of just listening. And probably who you should be listening to more than anything else is yourself. Like, look in the mirror. Are you being an asshole? Stop doing that. So I remind myself constantly that I did that and I didn't like it. It didn't feel good. I didn't enjoy making a paycheck that way. It felt very heavy. I had extreme anxiety. I'd come home at night, felt like I have an 800-pound elephant on my chest. And I never, ever, ever want my words or my actions or the way I communicate to represent that again. So that's my clear, easy answer. Am I 100% on it? Nope. Absolutely. I, have missteps all the time, but I yank myself up pretty quickly when I recognize something like that.
Yeah, I feel like it's not, I don't consider them missteps. I consider them growth, right? Like the world changes around us. We change, we grow, the triggers change. Like you get to a new level, there's new triggers, there's sneaking stuff adding in there. But I think it's all about like what you talked about. And I think there's an undertow of what you shared that like, you will never succeed in life or business if it's inauthentic or incongruent to you, or if it's taking a physical toll or an emotional toll on your well-being. And I'm going to say this, marketing is really fucking easy when you play the shitty way, when you go the controversial route, when you harp on pain points, when you jump on the back of it, right? But I guarantee you it always ends in failure or disaster. You might make money and you'll die on the inside. You might make money and die on the outside, or you might just die in all of them. And so I love that. And I think it's really important too that you remove the attachment to what it looks like, right? Like we get to share, like we are companies, we are entrepreneurs, we are solopreneurs, we are influencers, we are people that have an option or have actually made the decision to have a voice. And I don't care how big or small you are, we've made the decision to have a voice, and everything that we do is either contributing to the problem or it's creating a new solution. And I love that barometer. I think it's absolutely amazing. And hey, newsflash, people are going to fucking hate you. It's just going to happen, but they don't. Like, I'm just telling you that they don't. People have to understand that when people get upset, it's because you're challenging a fragile belief. Your positivity, your inspiration, you're telling them they can do it, and their response being negative is just screaming, I'm scared. You have to stay consistent. You have to be a lighthouse. You have to do it. And I absolutely, like, I just don't feel like people talk about it enough. Like, I get hate, but I don't get it publicly. They slide into my DMs. Like, it's always into my DMs for whatever reason. I'm like, why won't you post it publicly? I'm like, I want other people to come to my defense. And I just send them a video. I'm like, thank you. I love you. How are you? Can I help you? Yeah. And then I actually had one the other day. I talked about this on another podcast. I didn't know if it was a compliment or like a put down or just really like savage. His comment on one of my ads was, you never wear a hat over your eyebrows. And it like messed with my head for like 24 hours, right? And like, I'm like checking my head. And then I went into the mirror and I was like, oh, I don't like it above my eyebrows. This hat just fits, right? So I told my wife, I was like, babe. And she's like, well, just tell him it was keeping the sun out of your eyes, right? And I was like, sure. So I logged in and responded, oh, it's just keeping the sun out of my eyes. He's like, bro, you're inside. I just want you to show off that beautiful bald head. And I'm like, oh, he wasn't even trolling me. Oh, man. Okay, I got it. I think all of us, right? Like, and Melonie, you do this. What I love about you, Melonie, is that sometimes you don't put words to your feelings, but you now live in a place where like you just authentically show who you are. You show it in your emotions, you show it in your words, you show it in your languaging. And I just want to commend you for that because I think it's absolutely amazing, like the example that you're leading by and moving through this. And you know, the mission at Impact Bars is to empower women to live. That's what we came up with on the whiteboard one day, and I absolutely love it. So, Melonie, when you think about that, when you think about that mission statement, what you want to do in the world, like if you could have 5 minutes to say anything you want to any woman, to any person listening to this, and like what your mission is, how to better do it, how to move forward, something to put into their life, what would you tell them?
Oh my God, I thought you were going to go a different way with that question. I mean, the thing is, my natural instinct would be to make it about them and not about me, right? And when we're talking about, and I'll answer your question, but it just something came up when we were talking about, April, your positivity with your messaging. And I thought about how sometimes we do have these really angry, they happen to be women, who are commenting on our social media posts and like, they can be really mean, you know, and it is very easy to be impulsive and be reactive and just spit something out that isn't so nice. And so I have to take a moment, you know, and get grounded and always lead with love. But 9 times out of 10, what I find is a lot of these women just want to be seen or heard or respected. And if you just give them your time and acknowledge their feelings, like it's very powerful. And 9 times out of 10, that woman who started out really mean will then apologize and say, I'm sorry, I did not know that this is what you stood for, or that this, you know, I'm passionate about this, you know, but I understand what you're doing. And so for me, I mean, I think, you know, I could go 100 different ways with this question. I mean, I have been so lucky to be able to integrate my personal mission of empowering and helping other women that goes a long time back, many years ago, you know, and it's just been building and compounding, and to be able to put that in my business. So every aspect that we do is to help women. All of our food's designed for women based on feedback from women. We work with nonprofits. We partner with these nonprofits that help women and girls. And honestly, on my worst day, I mean, I think to all these really powerful moments where we're going into a building where these underserved, you know, victims of domestic violence, these women are doing work for our company. And it's like, everything just fades away. I'm like, this is why I'm doing it. I might have had a really bad day, way more slaps that day than hugs. But when I see that, I'm like, this is it. And so, for me, what we really try to do is just help women in a variety of ways. And I don't want to give you the sales pitch, you know it anyway, but that is really my guiding principle. I mean, and everybody, lately, all these people have come out, can you make product for men? I'm like, I don't know how to do that.
Hey, hold on. Listen, they are for men. I eat them every freaking day. Like, everybody, like, Melonie, anybody who says that, just send in this podcast, and you're going to have to listen to an hour of it to get it. But listen, I'm part of the company. They taste fucking amazing. And quite frankly, I like that they're smaller because I have no self-control. I need you to do it for me because I would eat an entire box of those things, but they're like snack size. And so it helps me keep my love handles off and my wife, somewhat attracted to me and not my dad bod. So they are for men.
It's not about that. It's not about the weight loss, right?
No,
it's about women
not.
coming to me being like, I'm so sick of having a half-eaten protein bar at the bottom of my purse that I can't finish. It has 300 calories, 50 grams of protein. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. I can't find that snack either. So
I actually think I got to interrupt you on this too, because you solved the problem in the market that most people don't talk about. Like a lot of the fitness products, a lot of the wellness products, like very few of them are like tailored towards women, right? And like serving sizes being one of them. And let's talk about, and we're not going to get into a nutrition podcast right now, but like how over consumed everything in our society is. Like that's actually why I love them. Like when you told me like, oh, one's a snack, two's a meal, I'm like, whatever. But like literally like the level of self-control that puts into me and like how good it makes me feel to like not have a crash and not to overeat and to feel like I'm making positive progress that literally tastes, I don't know, it just tastes like I'm cheating. Like it tastes fat. That's what it tastes like.
Good. That's what we want, right?
It tastes fat. That's the best way I can describe it. So yeah, I think it's awesome. So yeah. And what's your favorite flavor of the bars?
Oh, peanut butter party all day long.
Every
Peanut
time.
butter and chocolate chip. I mean, my favorite candy are the Justin's peanut butter cups.
They're so good.
I like to say these are Justin's the dark chocolate peanut butter cups, but healthy. And I love Justin's, so I'm not knocking that product. I eat those all day long because, of course, I'm a sugar addict.
Well, your first step to recovery is acknowledging it, right? And then now you're like, I don't want to recover. I'm just going to own this one. I'm going to keep this one.
Condiment addict is a new one. Like I've never heard that before.
Sir Kensington's, like I'm friends with them, but like they made me a mayonnaise addict, and then like I think Europe's had it nailed forever. When you get French fries in Europe, you don't get ketchup, you get mayonnaise, right?
That's
like
true.
They are genius. They are light years ahead of us in how to properly use mayonnaise, and I'm going to give them credit like all day. The problem is like I can knock down an entire jar of Sir Kensington's with my son in like 2 days, and I'm like, oh, it's fine. It's fine when you're keto, but when you're doing that and eating 400 grams of carbs a day, like you got to kind of pick one or the other. So, all right, April, I'm going to come to you because I think it's so powerful, like what you do. And like, I actually love that, like you teach story, and I've watched Melonie share her story and evolve, and you share yours and evolve. But for everybody listening, man, woman, anybody, no matter where they are, that haven't shared their story, that like has that tally of like, I haven't shared any of it, right? Like, what do you recommend the steps that they take? What can they do? What's the power of their story? What can they do with it? Like, give us some guidance from the April light beamer brain of like how to shine people's light into the world.
My favorite type of story to share and to tell, and the ones that I think have the biggest impact, are any type of transformation, right? So think about your own life and where have you walked through something? The before looked different than the after. And examine those transformational moments, those transformational lessons that you probably have experienced or learned or, gained wisdom from. And just start sharing that. Just start sharing pieces of that with other people. It could be, people in your community. It could be just people in your family. Like, really, what would that even look like to share a story like that with your children? To let your children know you've walked through something and this is a lesson that you learned from it. And then obviously you can take it into marketing and social media and building a business, building a brand, building an audience, and do it, on virtual Zoom calls and teach it and share it and all of those things on your channels. But the power that it holds is not only, again, that it can shine a light for someone else, but as we talked about earlier, it really ultimately helps you turn on your own internal light. And it helps you gain so much clarity about like, gosh, I had to go through that fire. That was a difficult situation, but now I can turn around and look at it and appreciate it. And so the times in our lives that we've been kind of knocked down, Melody, you sharing like your experience as an attorney, like someone saying like, never let them see you cry. Like you can look back on that now and say, but you know what? I had to go through that because now it's fueling me so much more now to want to share this message that I have for other women to let them know you can cry, you can be yourself, you can share your emotion. It's challenged you, right, to even discover how can you share more of your emotion because you locked so much of it away for so long. So you're getting to learn through the experience. That's the light being shined back on you. So I would just, I live this Pollyanna vision that the more we all share our stories, the more our world is going to lift up in consciousness, and that the more connected that we're going to be, and that we literally are going to kumbaya off into the sunset. So, I just need everybody to get on board of that vision with me. I just need them to start sharing their stories, be a light beamer, and we'll all be okay. We're all going to make it out if we would just do that one thing together and, stop with the judgment, stop with the hate, stop with the, black versus white and just all the things that's out in the world that just makes no freaking sense to me. To me, it's like, listen, share the story. You share the story and then open up your ears to listen to someone else as they share theirs. And I promise that's the vision of Light Beamers. That is the vision. I do this work mostly with women, but I will do it with any person that listens to me and, would want me to come along and kind of help them on that journey of sharing that story, because every single one of us has valuable stories inside of us to share. I have interviewed over, probably several thousand people in my career, which is a lot of people. And I have never, ever, ever walked away from an interview going, well, that was a waste of time. God, that person sure doesn't have a story. No, like, there's some gold in every single person that I've ever talked to. And it's so powerful when we dig in and hit that person at their core and find out what their real truth is. It just builds a connection and a bond like no other. Yeah. And all of that is waiting for us. Yep. So if we're feeling alone and we're feeling not seen and we're feeling isolated and, depressed and all those things, start looking for some stories that you can share in your own life and start bridging the gap and shining your light. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and start sharing that story with yourself. One of the most powerful things you can do is get it out of your head, write it, read it, record it on a video to hear yourself, and start filling your tank. And stories don't have to be long either. The shortest story ever told was Ernest Hemingway. It was a 6-word story, by the way. You can Google it. 6-word story. I think it was for sale, baby shoes, never worn. And it came on like the back end of a bet that like he couldn't write a story in under 10 words and get people to buy it. But I have, go ahead.
Can I interrupt you and tag on to that? And another really powerful way to share your story is just start writing I am statements. Yeah. I am blank. I am wise. I am beautiful. I am bold. I am brave. I am a light beamer. I am my story. I am a brilliant lawyer and a brilliant entrepreneur. I am love. I am a mother. I'm a wife. Like, just start writing those I am statements and claiming your truth.
Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. Melonie and I have done similar personal development work. So if you ever ask me who I am, I will always say I'm a loving, passionate, and trusting man. And it never goes away. I have it thing written everywhere. It's the 3 things of my future self and who I choose to be. And, follow with caution, but there's somebody I follow because he speaks my language, Wes Watson. He was a felon for 10 years, and now he helps people, trains people. He's a big personality online, podcast, everything. And he said his mission in the world, and this resonates with me, is to build the man to give him away. Right? To build the man required to give away. To build the man and then give it away to your children, give it away to the world, give it away to your spouse, give it away to whoever needs it. And like that, the way he says it just like stings my soul, and all of it. And I mean, all of it starts with us. All of it. how we see ourselves, who we choose to be, how we affirm that choice, how we step into that, how we, forge forward, like I am. Like the most important part, no author has ever written a book and no one has ever told a story without knowing who they were. And that's
Absolutely.
the most important thing that you can do. So Melonie, I'm gonna let you close. I'm gonna let you give the world some empowerment to live whatever you want to do. The floor is yours. Last message, final parting words, anything you want anybody to take away. The floor is yours, my friend.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
My neighbors decided to have some guys outside my window, and I'm like, of course, right now, this is happening. Anyhow, I mean, here's the advice I would give you right now. And, April, when you talk about these transformational stories, I think as hard as this time is right now, like some really great transformational stories can come out of this, right? So what a good way to focus on. And so what I would leave people with is, number one, I guess three things. Hopefully I don't forget them by the time I'm done. But the first thing is, don't let your limiting beliefs about yourself get in your way, right? Just take the jump. I mean, I can always go back to practicing law. And frankly, this process of becoming an entrepreneur is, it's the best learning I've ever gotten. It beats the hell out of any schooling I've ever gotten. No matter what happens in my life, I will always look back at this time as such a growth period in so many ways. It's opened so many doors. So I think getting out of your own way is the first thing. Number two, don't let this situation that we're all going through define you. I mean, it's really easy to say that, and we all have our own personal struggles, but oh my God, if I let this situation define me, I can't imagine what I'm going to look like when I come out the other end of it. Like, I can't imagine. And for me, what drives me every day is I've got 3 little girls, and they're watching my behavior all the time now. They're watching it all the time. And I need to model to them somebody who has strength, but who is also emotional. My oldest child, who's 10 now, when she was 8, we were sitting in the kitchen one day and she goes, Mom, I've never seen you cry. And it was like a punch in the gut that I had not opened up to her and let her know that it's okay to do that. Right. And so it's those little things. Boy, you learn a lot from your kids. Mm-hmm. But I just think it's really important to not let this situation define everything that we're doing. And number 3, I think that the parting word I would have is like, try something new right now. Like, I'm doing this crazy ass challenge. I would never I've given up meat for 75 days and alcohol. I love bourbon. Like, what the hell am I thinking? Right. But it has created this, honestly, it's put me to a schedule that I've never been consistent about a schedule. And I don't know, I'm only 14 days in. I have no idea the kinds of results that will come out of this, but it's something new. And it is forcing me to be really diligent about prioritizing my time. And I just think it's so simple, but this is the perfect time to try something new and to get out of your old habits and start forming some new ones. So those are sort of the 3 things I would leave you with during this time. Ask me next week and my advice might change, but today.
I love it. On the first one, I said this on an interview the other day. And it just resonates when you said the self-limiting beliefs. I said this, and it was how I see myself, and it's a reminder. We are who we are, not who we think we are. We are who we are, not who we think we are. And that's kind of been, it just came to me the other day, but it's kind of been this thing where it's like, I have the same fears. Like, I get the gut check. And I was like, but I have to remember, if I eliminate the logic or the thinking, it came to me for a reason. Like, call it wisdom, call it intuition, call it flow, call it source, call it God. Like, you pick your one. There's a reason we're feeling it. There's a reason we have it. And there's a reason it came to us. And it didn't come to us because we fucking thought it into existence, right? Like, that was the exact opposite of what happened. It came and then we tried to think it out of existence. So Melonie, I absolutely love that. Quick reminder, will you guys just give everybody a rundown of where they can find you? Again, Melonie, I'll let you go first, and April, you can back clean up.
Yep. Find us at impactbars.com.
With an E.
Impact is E-M. Yeah, with an E. Impact with an E. One day, my goal is that people will see that word and they will forget which way it's spelled. Like, that's what I'm shooting for.
We need like a radio jingle, right? Like, remember the ones, like, you still remember the phone number of those tire commercials and those lawyer commercials, right? So it's EMPACT bars.com. So it's impactbars.com. And on Instagram, Melonie is documenting a lot of her journey on 75
Yep, Impact Women is our private women-only Facebook group. So find us there.
Impact Women on Facebook? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Love it. And then April, give us the rundown again.
Yes, I hang out primarily on Facebook and Instagram at Lightbeamers, and you can check out our work and some of the things that we offer out into the world at lightbeamers.com. But the best place to come and really chit chat with me and hang out and share your story and let me put my arms around you and guide you is the Lightbeamers community on Facebook. It's a private, free Facebook group that's open really to everyone. I do allow men in there. However, you must be able to put up with the feminine energy that exists because we are about 98% female and we make no apologies for that. So I would invite you to come and start sharing your story today and shining that light.
I love it. Well, both of you, thank you so much for sharing this much time with me. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your gifts, your light, shining it, being light beamers or impactful women. Pick one. Pick your, I don't
Or
know.
both.
Yeah, or both. Yeah, or both. Yeah. Yes, both. And then we'll get April hooked on the bars and the shakes, especially that shake.
Yeah.
Hey, Melonie, what's the name of that shake again?
The trim down shake. You had it right.
Yeah, but it's like what's the flavor?
Oh, it's vanilla cinnamon, but we spell the sin S-I-N.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You love to play.
Yeah.
With
I
everything.
need some of that.
Yeah, if you ever wonder like what Melonie really thinks, she's a sugar addict. Go look at some of her Halloween costumes and then the way that she spells the name of these products, and like the devil is in the details. The devil is in the details. It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. No, of course. Thank you so much. For everybody listening, I will see you guys in the next episode. I ain't got any cheeky way to close this one. If I remember to record an outro, I will. If I don't, remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, and I will see you guys in the next show.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.